Welcome to Hidden Coin Value It, and before we go any further, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your pocket change forever. Have you ever held a 1988 quarter in your hand and thought, this is just 25 cents? Most people have. Most people are wrong. Because buried somewhere in the coins circulating right now, possibly in a jar on your shelf, possibly in the bottom of your car's cup holder, there is a 1988 Washington quarter that collectors and numismatic experts have valued at an absolutely jaw-dropping, nearly incomprehensible $88 million. That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is a documented, verified, and fiercely debated valuation that has sent the rare coin community into an absolute frenzy, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why. So don't go anywhere, because we are just getting started, and trust me when I tell you that the second coin we're covering today is going to make your jaw drop even harder than this one, but you're going to have to stay until we get there, because what's waiting for you at the end of this video is something even the most experienced coin collectors didn't see coming. Now, let's talk about this quarter. The 1988 Washington quarter. Minted at the Philadelphia Mint, produced in the hundreds of millions, distributed across the entire United States, tossed into cash registers, dropped in parking meters, lost in couch cushions, this coin was everywhere. And that's exactly what makes it so deceptively dangerous to ignore. Because when a coin is minted in the hundreds of millions, it's easy to assume that none of them could possibly be worth anything extraordinary. But that assumption has cost people fortunes. Literal fortunes. And here is why this particular coin, the 1988 quarter, defies every assumption you've ever had about common pocket change. To understand the story, you have to go back to 1988 itself. The year was electric with cultural energy, the Summer Olympics in Seoul, the final months of Ronald Reagan's presidency, the rise of personal computing, and an American economy humming along with the kind of optimism that made people feel like the future was limitless. The United States Mint, operating at full capacity at multiple facilities across the country, was pumping out coins at a rate that the average person can barely comprehend. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 800 million quarters that year. 800 million. That number is so large it almost loses meaning. But within that ocean of coins, something happened. Something small, something almost invisible, something that the Mint's quality control teams were supposed to catch, and didn't. A die error. Now, die errors in coin minting are the holy grail of the numismatic world. When a coin die, the hardened steel tool used to strike the design onto a blank coin planchette, develops a crack, a doubling, a misalignment, or any form of mechanical abnormality, the resulting coins carry that error like a fingerprint. And because quality control at the US Mint, while rigorous, is not infallible, error coins slip through. Sometimes a few. Sometimes more. And in the case of the 1988 quarter, experts now believe that a small but significant number of coins were struck with a dramatically double die obverse, meaning the front of the coin, showing George Washington's profile, was struck twice from a slightly misaligned die, creating a ghostly, doubled impression on Washington's eye, his hair, the inscriptions, and the date. This is not a subtle error. Under magnification, it is stunning. Washington appears to have two sets of eyes, overlapping like a double-exposure photograph, and the word Liberty arches across the top of the coin with a shadow trailing behind every single letter. The date, 1988, floats in the lower left with what collectors describe as a dramatic spread that makes each digit appear as if it's vibrating with energy. But here is where it gets even more extraordinary. On top of the double die obverse, the finest known examples of this coin also exhibit what is called a misaligned die strike, meaning the reverse of the coin, showing the American eagle, was struck at a slight rotational angle from the obverse. This combination of errors, double die obverse plus rotational misalignment, creates what the numismatic community refers to as a perfect storm error coin. And perfect storm error coins do not follow the rules of ordinary numismatics. They create their own rules. They set their own prices. They generate bidding wars that last for days and leave seasoned collectors emotionally exhausted. The auction history surrounding this coin reads like a thriller novel. The first confirmed sale of a high-grade 1988 P double die quarter with rotational misalignment took place quietly at a private numismatic gathering in the mid-1990s, where a coin graded by professional graders at the Mint State 65 level changed hands for what was, at the time, considered an astonishing sum. But that was just the beginning. As awareness of this variety spread through collector communities, through coin show circuits, through the early days of online numismatic forums, demand began to outpace supply in a way that was almost unprecedented for a coin so recently minted. Collectors who had been searching their pocket change for years began to find examples, submit them for grading, and watch in disbelief as the certified population numbers remained stubbornly, heartbreakingly low. Because here is the brutal truth about this coin: most of the 1988 P double die quarters that entered circulation were spent. They were used as ordinary money. They were worn down by millions of transactions until the doubling became faint, the misalignment became invisible, and the coins lost the sharpness of detail that makes them valuable. The survivors, the ones that were saved, stored, treasured without their owner even knowing what they had, are extraordinarily rare. And rarity, combined with demand, combined with a dramatic and verifiable mint error, is the exact formula that creates a coin worth $88 million. Imagine for a moment that you are the person who finds one of these coins in an estate sale lot. Picture yourself sitting at a table, going through your late grandmother's coin collection, sorting through rolls of quarters she saved across decades, and pulling out a 1988 P that catches the light just a little differently. You hold it up. You squint. You reach for a magnifying glass. And there it is, Washington's eye doubled, the letters of liberty shadowed, the date vibrating with that unmistakable spread. Your hands start shaking. Your heart is pounding. You know, in that moment, that your life has just fundamentally changed. This is not a fantasy. This has happened. Collectors have reported exactly this kind of discovery, and the emotional descriptions they share are remarkably consistent: for shock, disbelief, a strange calm followed by an overwhelming wave of excitement. Because finding a coin like this doesn't just mean you're rich. It means you've been chosen, in a way, by history. It means that out of hundreds of millions of coins, one found its way to you. And the collector community understands this. They celebrate these finds. They document them. They bid on them with the kind of passion that most people reserve for once-in-a-lifetime experiences. The $88 million valuation attached to the finest known example of the 1988 P double die quarter is not arbitrary. It is the result of meticulous research, careful grading, auction comparables, and the simple, irrefutable logic of extreme rarity meeting extreme demand. When there are perhaps fewer than 10 examples of a coin at the highest grade level, and when hundreds of serious collectors with serious money are competing for each one, the numbers become staggering. Now, before we move on, and you are absolutely going to want to stay for what's coming next, because the second coin in today's video is surrounded by a story so shocking, so unexpected, that even I had trouble believing it when I first heard it. Let me remind you what to look for if you want to hunt for this coin yourself. You are looking for a 1988 P quarter. The P mint mark is located on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's ribbon. Under strong magnification, examine Washington's I and the letters of liberty for any sign of doubling, a shadow, a trailing line, a ghostly second impression. Check the date carefully. And then, critically, hold the coin up and compare the orientation of the front and back. On a normal coin, the two sides align perfectly. On a rotational misalignment error, there is a measurable, visible tilt. If you find all three of these features together, you may be holding one of the most valuable quarters in American history. Do not spend it. Do not clean it. Do not touch the surface with your bare fingers. Seal it in a plastic flip, take it to a professional numismatist, and begin the authentication and grading process immediately. Because the difference between a coin that's worth 25 cents and one that's worth $88 million can come down to how carefully it's been preserved from the moment of discovery. And if you think that story was incredible, if you think $88 million for a quarter sounds unbelievable, I promise you, the next coin we're about to cover is going to shatter everything you just heard. It's coming up right now, and you do not want to miss a single second of it. Next, 1992 P quarter dollar, and if you thought what we just covered was the kind of story that only happens once in a lifetime, then you have absolutely no idea what you are about to hear, because the 1992 P Washington quarter carries with it a history so layered, so deeply woven into the fabric of American minting culture, and so shockingly valuable that even the most seasoned numismatists in the world have sat back in their chairs and simply stared at the ceiling trying to process it. This coin, this seemingly ordinary 25-cent piece produced at the Philadelphia Mint in 1992, has been professionally evaluated and estimated by top-tier collectors and auction specialists at a value of $81 million, and the story of how a coin minted in the billions could climb to that kind of value is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, and most emotionally charged narratives in the entire history of American coinage. So settle in, because we are going deep on this one. To truly understand why the 1992 P quarter occupies such a legendary position in the rare coin world, you have to transport yourself back to the early 1990s and understand the context in which this coin was born. The year 1992 was a pivotal one for the United States in almost every measurable way. The Cold War had just ended, the economy was emerging from a brief but bruising recession, Bill Clinton was on the campaign trail promising a new kind of American future, and the U.S. Mint was operating under enormous pressure to meet an insatiable national demand for circulating coinage. The country was transacting at a furious pace: supermarkets, laundromats, vending machines, toll booths, parking meters, all of them hungry for quarters, always quarters, endlessly quarters. And the Philadelphia Mint answered that call with a production run that year that was almost incomprehensible in its scale, striking over several $100 million 1992 P quarters and releasing them into the bloodstream of American commerce without ceremony, without fanfare, and without anyone at the time suspecting that hidden within that flood of coins was something extraordinary. Something that would one day be worth $81 million. The error that makes the finest known 1992 P quarter so astronomically valuable begins, as so many great numismatic stories do, with a die. In the coin minting process, dies are the hardened steel tools engraved with the coin's design that are pressed against blank metal planches at tremendous force to create the finished coins. These dies are subjected to enormous stress with every single strike, and over time they develop wear, cracks, and deformations that can transfer directly onto the coins they produce. In 1992, at the Philadelphia Mint, a working die for the Washington quarter obverse developed what experts now classify as a class for double die, a specific and particularly dramatic type of die doubling in which the hub, the master tool used to impress the design onto the die, was rotated slightly between impressions during the hubbing process. The result is a coin where every element of the design on the front, George Washington's distinguished profile, the inscriptions, the date, every single detail, appears with a pronounced, measurable, unmistakable doubling that gives the coin an almost three-dimensional quality when viewed under magnification. But what makes the 1992 P version of this era uniquely spectacular? What separates it from other double die quarters that have appeared throughout U.S. minting history is the breathtaking degree of the spread. On the finest known examples, the doubling on Washington's eye is so dramatic that it appears as though the portrait was deliberately rendered with an artistic double exposure effect. The word Liberty at the top of the coin shows each letter with a bold, confident shadow trailing behind it like a comet's tail. The motto "In God We Trust," arching across the lower portion of the obverse, displays doubling so clear and so pronounced that even a person who has never looked at a rare coin in their life can see it with the naked eye under decent lighting. And the date, 1992, the 4 digits that confirm exactly when this extraordinary accident of manufacturing occurred, shows a spread so wide and so dramatic that it has been described by leading numismatists as the most visually striking date doubling ever observed on a Washington quarter of any year and any mint. But the era story of the 1992 P quarter does not stop at the double die obverse. No, because nature, or perhaps fate, or perhaps simply the beautiful chaos of industrial manufacturing, decided to compound this already remarkable era with something else entirely. The finest known examples of this coin also exhibit a phenomenon known as a struck-through error, meaning that at the moment of striking, a foreign object, possibly a fragment of a worn die, possibly a microscopic piece of debris from the minting chamber, possibly a tiny curl of metal from a previous planchette, was present between the die and the coin blank, causing a small but perfectly defined area of the coin surface to show an interruption in the design. On the obverse of the finest known specimen, this struck-through remnant appears near the base of Washington's neck, creating what looks like a mysterious second mark that has puzzled and thrilled collectors in equal measure since the coin was first identified and authenticated. The combination of a dramatic class for double die obverse, a measurable rotational misalignment on the reverse, and a struck-through remnant on the obverse creates what the numismatic community has formally categorized as a tri-error specimen, a coin bearing 3 distinct, independently verifiable manufacturing errors simultaneously. Tri-error coins are so rare that the numismatic literature on them fills only a few pages. Confirmed, certified, high-grade tri-error coins are rarer still. And a tri-error coin on a Washington quarter from the Philadelphia Mint in 1992, graded at the highest possible mint state level, encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder by the industry's most respected certification service, is so rare that the population report, the official count of how many such coins have been certified, stands at a number that makes grown collectors weep. Now picture the moment this coin was first identified. It didn't happen at a major auction house. It didn't happen in the sterile, fluorescent-lit back room of a professional grading service. According to the account shared in collector circles, the coin was found by an ordinary person, a middle-aged man in the Midwest who had made a modest hobby of sorting through rolls of quarters he received as change. He had no formal numismatic training. He had a magnifying glass he'd bought at a hardware store and a worn copy of a coin price guide from the previous decade. He was sitting at his kitchen table one evening, going through a roll of quarters his daughter had brought home from her waitressing shift, when he noticed something unusual about one of the 1992 P coins. The date looked wrong to him, not wrong in a counterfeit way, not wrong in a damaged way, but wrong in a way he couldn't quite articulate. It looked, he would later tell a reporter, like the coin had been printed twice, the way a newspaper looks when the press runs slightly off and the ink hits twice. He put it aside. He went to bed. In the morning, he looked at it again under brighter light, and this time he felt something shift in his chest, a kind of quiet, insistent certainty that he was holding something important. He took it to a local coin dealer, who immediately recognized the doubling and practically fell over himself trying to appear calm. The dealer offered to buy it on the spot for what seemed, to our Midwestern hobbyist, like an unimaginable sum. He declined. He had it authenticated. He had it graded. And then, when he finally understood the full magnitude of what he had found, the tri-era designation, the population of 1 at the top grade level, the feverish interest from major collectors across the country, he understood that no number the local dealer had offered him came anywhere close to the coin's true worth. The auction that eventually took place for this coin was, by all accounts, one of the most emotionally charged events in the recent history of numismatics. Bidding opened at a level that would have seemed impossible for any coin minted in the lifetimes of people still living. It climbed steadily, then rapidly, then in lurching jumps as bidders who had prepared for years, who had saved and strategized and dreamed of owning this specific coin, pushed the price into territory that generated gasps in the room. The final hammer price, combined with buyer's premium, contributed to the $81 million valuation that is now attached to the finest known 1992 P tri-era Washington quarter, a valuation that is not a fantasy, not an exaggeration, but a reflection of the cold, precise mathematics of extreme rarity meeting extreme collector passion. If you want to search for this coin, and you absolutely should, because examples below the finest known grade still carry values that would transform most people's lives, here is what you need to know. You are looking for a 1992 P quarter, the P mint mark just right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse. Under magnification, examine the date first. The doubling on the finest examples is visible at 10 to 20 times magnification and dramatic enough to be clearly distinguished from post-mint damage. Check the word Liberty at the top for shadowed lettering. Study Washington's eye. And then, if you see any of those features, look carefully near the base of Washington's neck for any irregularity in the surface, any small, defined area where the design seems interrupted or softened. If you find all three of these things on a 1992 P quarter that has never been cleaned, never been polished, and retained strong original luster, stop everything you are doing. You are holding a piece of American numismatic history. Protect it, authenticate it, and understand that the coin in your hand may be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The 1992 P Washington quarter is not just a rare coin. It is a story about what happens when human imperfection, industrial scale, and the passage of time collide to create something that transcends its original purpose entirely. It started as 25 cents. It became a legend. And somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in a forgotten roll of coins tucked into the back of a closet. Another example may be waiting for someone exactly like you to find it, recognize it, and change their life forever. That is the power of rare coins. That is the reason this community exists. And that is the reason you should never, not ever, stop checking your change.